I'm Dean. I'm the dad.
I'm Laura. I'm the mom.
And I'm Krystlyn. I'm the daughter.
And together we are
Family
Plot. Minus the dog. I don't know why the dog's going off upstairs. But more important than that is our guest this week is on the line right now. Please give a rousing warm round of applause and a nice welcome to my friend, my mom in comedy, Miss Shelah Grimm Erickson. Yay! Yay!
Oh, wow.
For now, we'll go with that. So, before we get into this week's episode, couple of things, just the usual housekeeping stuff. If you want to support the show, you can do that a couple of ways. You can make monthly donations through Patreon. There's 3 teams is broken up into. You get cool stuff whichever way you go. Just, that's one way. If you don't have it in you to do a monthly donation, but you just want to throw us a bone or two, you can do that through Buy Me a Coffee. Buy Me a Coffee, one-time donation, any amount. It's real simple. And then if you're a first-time listener, please welcome to the show. We are thrilled to have you. There is a deal we like to make with all of our first-time listeners, which is if you enjoy the show, please share it on social media with your friends. And if you don't, please keep it to yourself. That's what we ask.
Put it in your pocket and don't share it with anybody else.
Exactly. So,
for alone, but not for everybody. But,
So, with that out of the way, allow me to introduce our guest a little bit better than I have. Shelah Grimm Erickson is one of the first comics I ever met that was able to get me to get better because she was able to bypass my fragile ego. And I have the world's most fragile ego. So there was a time that if you weren't telling me what I wanted to hear, I completely shut down. And Shelah sat me down one day and was like, look, okay, one, you haven't thought about your look at all. None of this works. None of it. Fix it. There's no stopgap measure for that. Wear a plain t-shirt. Don't put anything on it, because the minute you have something on it, that's something in the audience for the audience to get distracted by. Why is he wearing that? What is that? If you're going to wear a t-shirt, don't have nothing on it. And that jacket's got to go. It's like, and I mean, she was as tough as my Aunt Sherry, who my aunt never lied to me. Didn't have the tact to lie. Brutally, bluntly honest. But, like, I remember at first she sat down and she's like, you do this well and you do that well. Now, are you prepared to hear what you don't do well? And it was a much longer list, but because she said she liked things about it, she was able to bypass my fragile ego. So there was that. And then she just became someone that for the longest time I was dying to impress. And then I realized that she had spoke to me, so I'd impressed her as much as I was ever gonna, because there are comics to this day that she won't talk to. And then I began to find out that she was spiritual in a way that I didn't know was cool. Meaning that she may say a curse word here or there, but her connection to the divine was pure, and she was able to make me see things in ways I had not seen them before. So, without further ado, Native American comic, the only female Native American comic to work Sturgis by the way. Not to mention former member of the WBF, which, because we're PG-13, I have to say was the Worldwide Itch Federation. And yes,
female dog.
Yeah, there was a B in that word. That's why it was WBF. With her, and I believe the other comic's name was Carolyn Picard, the Cajun Queen, which she had the name first. For those Star Trek fans who are getting upset, she had the name Picard before there was a Star Trek. So she can keep it. It was a real name she had. And so she did that, and for a short time was the main squeeze of one Mr. Kevin Nash. And then she moved on to someone so much better and cooler. Anyway, I just can't say enough. She's been in movies. She is, these days she spends most of her time nursing and getting people back to health. She is so smart. Please give it up again for our guest, the one and only Shelah Grimm Erickson. So that's what I'm going to say.
Thank you so much, Dean. I do remember the first time that I did. Actually, I've watched you quite a bit, and I could see there was talent. That was very apparent with your comedic timing and things like that. But people, I think, were so distracted by all that was going on around you, surrounding you, and on you, that they weren't listening to your words. And once people became familiar with your works, they were able to catch, some of it was a little time release comedy, a little before its time. I always enjoyed your shows. I always thought they were really good, and it wasn't something that you saw every day, your kind of comedy. But I do thank you for mentioning that. And I was always proud to be your mom in comedy. I watched you develop from a very young comic, barely able to get on the stage.
Yeah, it took me a while to get there. And part of it was I just had to give up on the idea of being Sam Kinison because I wasn't him. And I was never going to be him, no matter how much I liked him. I also had to stop believing I could be Bill Hicks. I couldn't be those guys. I had to be the first Dean Bose. And once I got there, things got better for me. But it took me forever to get to that place. And some comics never leave it. Some comics are still trying to be their hero. And you're not going to have much success, at least in my opinion. I don't know how you're going to have success trying to be anybody but you. And you sort of made that real to me. And it took me it took me a while to get there. But because of you, I got to do some of the coolest shows of my life. I remember I got to MC for a big gathering of bikers. I don't remember if it was Baca but it was a group like that. And I remember it being in this hotel in Topeka, and the hotel manager had come up on the stage and was like, "There's no smoking in this room." Blah, blah. And at the time, I smoked in my act. So first thing I did was light a cigarette and tell them I had no respect for authority. At that point, I could have murdered one of the crowd. They would have still loved me.
And you'd have still had everybody's back.
Yeah, it was.
Everybody would have backed, yeah. Leave him alone. He's a freaking comedian, but he's okay. And that would have been, like a 7-year-old that was there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. I got to do some great shows, and that's thanks to you. But there is a joke in your act that I have to talk about, because no matter how rough the crowd is, it always works. It always works. And it always gets you in the door, and it does it by using a piece of advice us male comics get all the time, and we have to actually fail to understand it, which is you got to get the women on board. And you have a joke that does that. And I don't want to tell it because you tell it so much better, but you're talking about being in a doctor's office. And
right.
And when you say this one line, not only do the women laugh, they echo you. Like they whisper among themselves like, "Oh yes, it's absolutely true." And that line has to do with
hiding your underwear.
Yes, exactly. Like
every woman I don't care who you are. You could be the Kamala Harris, or you could be anybody. And you go to a gynecologist, office. First thing you do when they tell you to get undressed is hide your underwear.
Yes.
I don't know why we do that. Maybe because as young girls we're taught, don't show your underwears to everybody. Because I can remember being in first grade and tap dancing on top of my desk when the teacher left the room. Because my mother, in her dignity, thought it would be cute to put me in frilly little lace socks, those patent leather shoes, and tulle underneath the little girl outfit. And I was such a tomboy. And she thought, oh, she's going to be herself and she'll be fine. I hopped up my desk, but want to see what I can do? I'm a self-taught tap dancer. Watch me. Of course, all the little boys watched. And if something got stuck in my crack, I'd pull it out. I wouldn't care. So as a little girl, I didn't care who saw my undies or not. But still to this day, and I just recently heard another comic using almost the same line verbatim.
Oh, no. Oh, no, that's not good.
No, well, evidently it got around. But there wasn't quite the emotional tag. When you're doing your own stuff in comedy, you have your own emotional tag that you put on your stuff, your own setup, and you're just known for that one.
Yeah.
It gets men and women both laughing.
Oh, absolutely, it does. But it I know, I can't tell you the number of guy comics that I ring, and maybe it's different today. I was getting into the industry late 90s, early 2000s. So maybe it's different, but I can't tell you the number of comics who thought, they could get away with saying lines like, why do women think, or something like that. They're leading to this big point they're trying to make, and like women shut it down. And then the guys don't laugh, or worse yet, they get one laugh. Oh, she's not laughing. I'm going to drink my beer. And that's worse because you had those people on your side. Something and someone else shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that's usually at the point at which a male comic that's going to be anything realizes, I have to get her on my side too.
Right.
And because she has the power to shut this down.
She sure does.
And like your joke was so, like you were able to say things and do things that were much dirtier and much more edgy than that. But that was always your in. That joke and a couple of others, but that joke in particular was your first power joke, in my opinion. Like you had a great opening line because all comics do. You take your second best line and put it up front. But that was a joke that was like, no, strap in. I've got a show for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that joke because the women would start laughing. The guys would start laughing because they've never noticed this. No. Like, I've seen your underwear. Why are you hiding it from the gynecologist? Because he's never seen it. Duh.
No.
He is not supposed to see my underwear. You are allowed.
It's okay that he has an elbow inside of me.
Yeah.
But he's not supposed to see my underwear.
Right.
It's okay. He might have delivered 4 of my children from that pathway. He is not supposed to see my underwear.
Exactly. And from there, you could go on and talk about anything, edgy or not. And it was
open at that point.
Yes. And the only better thing you did was May. Mm-hmm. May, I don't know of a single comic in Kansas City who's seen it who doesn't love May.
Well, May was a real person. May was a lady that lived in St. Joseph, Missouri. She actually was married to a co-owner of a restaurant that was her husband in St. Joseph, Missouri. He left her for a younger woman. And she went on, and I could just sit there and listen to her for hours. And of course, when you become like a crystal, which a lot of comedians are, we absorb not only what you're saying, we absorb your mannerisms, we absorb your eyes, we absorb, this sounds funny, your soul when we're watching.
Right.
Because we're the type that are not entertained just by words. We listen for every detail. We watch for every detail of someone who's telling us a story. Perhaps because it's a form of performance art, because that's something we thrive on. And May is definitely performance art. And the fact that I am Native American, my eyes can go in that direction real easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did come from, the land crossing and everything. And when you go back in my DNA, I have a lot of Mongolian in me. Also, another part of it is most people are like, well, you don't have any Oriental ancestry. And I'm like, how many natives in the northern tribes don't?
Yeah.
As we do.
Yeah, because, that land bridge,
across that, so they can say what they want, based on anyone's belief that there was a great land mass between Russia and the Americas.
Yep.
And it's an ancient story, and the farther north you go, the more Oriental natives were. If you look at the Inuit tribe, and coming from that too, as we talked about, Dean, about beliefs, and things of that sort. I have found out that a lot of Buddhism follows the same native beliefs.
Right. Yeah, in fact, we did an episode on black-eyed kids not too long ago, which I had an encounter with in, of all places, Grand Junction, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't know what I had experienced, and I spent years trying to talk myself out of it. And then I happened to catch an episode of Mysterious America, something like that, where I heard about black-eyed kids, and I was like, oh my God, that's the encounter I had. But, people will want to say, oh, well, that's just a modern thing that came out of the internet. But when I was researching, Native American tribes talked about black-eyed people. And if you ran into them, you were supposed to go the other way from them. Stay away, because they were dangerous. And I only have one story of someone who's let them into their home, and he got real sick, wound up dying from cancer eventually. It took him a while, but he got beaten down, and his wife did as well. But yeah, it just, it may be coincidence. It's the only story I've ever heard where someone let someone in, but it was, like I said, Native Americans talked about black-eyed beings and didn't want, we're like, no truck with these people. They're not good. And again, a lot of Native Americans talk about, and I've talked about it in this show, if you dig into their history, they talk about there's a wider world. And things from that wider world can cross over. And worse, you can cross over into the wider world. And either way is bad. You don't want to do that. Because, and I've said it 1,000 times, is I will occasionally get flack from people online about, well, the Indians didn't know where they were going beyond a certain point because it all looked the same. And I was like, you're crazy, because they have landmarks the same as we do. They're just different kinds of landmarks. They knew where the tree fell over the river. They knew where the cave where the bear slept was. They knew where the clearing was. And to them, that's their Walmart, Costco, and Target. That, okay, I know where to go in relation to those three things to get anywhere. And if they suddenly couldn't find those things, and they couldn't find their tribe where it was supposed to be, they knew they were in the wider world unless they encountered something like the Pukwudgie, which, or the Sasquatch was described. It was never called that, but it was described as something that lived in this wider world, and you didn't want to mess with it.
Well, as we know, Wonka Tonka, he has a huge. We'd be stupid to think that we were one-dimensional. All that we've learned in science, if we go by basic, the study of science, we know that cells have many dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's many parts to a cell.
Right.
There's a phagocyte, egocyte, there's all these different parts of a cell. And it's like we're just now starting to branch into that with genetics and epigenetics, that we have absorbed trauma through the genetics
right.
from our ancestors. And God knows what was going on back then.
Exactly.
Imagine coming across the plains, you know, and all of a sudden you're attacked. You know, this is something that I imagine. I have European ancestry as well. And imagine that genetic, losing 2 children, you know, to a beheading, you know, and things like that. All those types of genetics that are now pulling into, we wonder why people are so depressed. We're wondering why we have these new, I call them children of the light, or the violent kids that are coming in, the autistic, the ones that are not able to communicate verbally, but yet their mind runs at a much faster pace.
Right.
We have to think about that. That's coming into the epigenetics.
Right.
So there was a time, I think, if we think of any kind of evolution, and we can think of it right now as we are going through an evolution. These children of the light have been born. They're not a disability. They're far ahead of us.
Right. And
we do not, where they come from, they don't have to talk to communicate.
Exactly.
And we're finding also, as time is passing genetically, Americans not only are getting larger, but the vocal points and the thyroid and a few other areas within here is closing down. It's not as easy to intubate someone as it used to be because the vocal area is not as open as it used to be. So, are we headed towards that type of thing? And then we think about, like you mentioned, this is a total 120, you know, I'm famous for that. What dimension? He can become visible when he wants.
Oh, yeah.
Not to believe that there is a creature out there. How stupid are we? To not believe there's not another solar system. How ignorant are we? On what plane are we on right now?
Exactly.
We're on a plane to learn feelings. We're on a plane to learn emotion. We're on a plane to learn sadness, happiness, and it's a form of hell because you're able to experience all the physical pain, the mental anguish, the deaths of those around you. So I think we go through different planes to get to the universe we're meant to be in. And many of us have to do it over and over again to learn those lessons.
Yeah, I'm almost certain I'm one of those people because I'm kind of...
No, I'm a repeat offender.
I'm kind of hard-headed and stubborn. That's what Laura will tell you, is that I'm stubborn. And my point is that you keep sticking with me, you must be stubborn too.
Uh-huh.
There's no explaining things to a woman in love, my dear.
That's true. That's very true. And I don't know, you know, from the story that Caroline had told you about, the owner's son had been dead for 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Sitting there having a beer with him.
Yeah. That's what she said. Like, he walked into the green room and just started having a conversation with y'all. And that's what
we had a few of those encounters.
Yeah.
We walked into a truck stop in Trying to think of a place where it was in Texas as you're on I-40.
Not Midland.
From Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Interstate.
Okay. I know where that is.
It starts with an A. It's known throughout the world. By the time, no.
Amarillo.
It's like all my exes. I'm trying to think of a word or the name of the city.
Amarillo?
This truck driver walks up to us, and we're in like one of the little filling stations, but we got a show there that night. This truck driver walks up. He goes, "You know what you girls need? You both need a CB." We were like, okay, Mr. Freak, let's see what he's into, right now. 2 women driving alone across this interstate. We were on our way to do a show over in the Four Corners area at an airport. And this was one of our stops. It was a C.W. Kendall run for sure.
Yeah.
But,
I was just about to say it had to be Kendall.
Yeah. You wake up and the weather station is in your parking lot. You know something's happened.
Right.
Okay, when you look out there and there's reporters that she's, and I'm turning TV on, I go, and I called her. She was in the room next door, and I'm like, "Picard, look on your TV. Who's out there?" She goes, "Is that the people out in the parking lot?" And I said, "Yeah, we're both looking." She goes, "They're reporting from here. What's going on?" I said, "Some kind of snowstorm event or something." She goes, "We might as well get on the road." And when they close a gate behind you on the interstate, what's that supposed to mean?
Nothing good. It's like, well, you're on your own.
Across I-40.
Yeah.
Believe me. So we did. And that was the first show we had both missed. We almost got there. And then we had to go up Highway 666. Oh.
See, that highway actually has, like, paranormal stuff that happens on it all the time. Phantom truckers, like strange hitchhikers. Heck, trying to remember his name. Dave. It's a comic out of the West Coast, like Oregon. Dave something. Dave Miller. Dave Minor. Something like that. Yeah. Anyway, he told me one time about a gig he did, right? And his car died. And so he's hitchhiking to the next gig because it's the only way he's got to get there. And he gets picked up by this car. And he kind of, the people up front are talking to him. He's having a hard time staying awake. His brain is really kind of foggy. And he hadn't done anything to earn that, And he passes out a couple times, wakes up. They're like, "Hey, we're here." He steps out of the car with his bag, turns around to thank them, and the whole car has vanished. Like, gone. And I'm just like, okay. And at the time, I didn't believe him, but after doing 100+ episodes of this show, I have questions, especially seeing as science not too long ago posited that some of these, portals that are opening up, these stars that are just like, they say that they might just be multiverses as they emerge. Like, boop. And so, if that's the case, if there are actual multiverses that pop into the universe, then and maybe the Native Americans knew what was up and understood it better than we do. Just because they had a spiritual understanding instead of a scientific one is no reason to think they didn't know.
Well, the other part of it is, too, let's look at this part, Dean. Let's step back and think about this Plymouth Rock. Okay, so here comes a great big boat. And the natives step up like, well, hey, more visitors. Hey. Why weren't they scared of the great big boats? Have they seen them before? Truly they have. The Vikings.
Yeah.
Okay? These stories are passed down amongst our nations, and it's getting rarer and rarer that we have older people that are able to connect these stories. My grandfather told me stories that I thought, wow. You know, he must have been smoking some great stuff. But then I find out later on, you know, Grandpa wasn't doing that, but he was originally a moonshiner. He might have drank some good stuff. They actually have a little bit of a movie that's a lot like my grandfather's lifestyle with Lawless.
Okay.
Where there's the three Bondurant brothers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but anywho, the thing is, he told us a story, you know, about we're just on the back of a turtle riding through time. And we're like, what the hell? And of course, the way he would tell it, you had to sit down and listen.
Right.
You know, great respect. You know, this dude has lived, you know, almost 100 years. And he never had to speak a lot. It was just something about him. And you know, people, when you meet them, there are certain people, which I call my tribe, which you guys are one of. You know, because I don't allow myself to associate with a lot of people. You know, because I get to pick my tribe now.
Right.
You know, and a lot of the indigenous people, we're all doing this joke like, how indigenous are you? You know, I went out this morning and picked corn.
Right.
Things like that. We play that. Who's more indigenous, you know, game now. But who's used more meth? We don't know. The thing is, we're all trying to, they no longer are supposed to be selling any alcohol on reservations or anything like that. But it doesn't keep the native from going out and getting the stuff they want. You know, it's like every other American. Period.
Right.
We don't like so much being called Native American. You can call us Indians. You can change names. You can do whatever you want. I grew up on Squaw Creek. Okay? Am I offended by that world? Hell no, but evidently some white people are. Because they went and changed it to Lois Hills. You know, the Lois Bluffs or something like that. They're no longer the Squaw Bluffs. You know, and those were hunting points.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Those were places that they went deer hunting, buffalo hunting, and there's plenty of, like, over by Elwood, Kansas, you'd find plenty of buffalo walrus. And there would always be purple flowers in the middle of the buffalo walrus. So we knew that's where the buffalo were, you know, and it was like the little marks like that. But once again, you know, when my grandfather told us the story of the panther, that he was in an outhouse, and he heard this, like a woman scream. And I'm thinking, man, I bet you can cut that off real fast, too, Papa. You know? But he said, he sat there for a minute, and he said it climbed on top of the outhouse. Okay?
Yeah.
So, we were all like, you know, we're like in between, I'd say, the ages of 7 and 14, just listening to the story. And he said, and when I came out of the outhouse, the wings took off.
Ooh.
That was it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a panther. But it was something not of this world.
Right. Well, just before I left to go to California to hook up with this beautiful lady here and meet our daughter, who was 6 at the time, I had driven past a field on 435, and I saw a big black cat in. Now, I'm not talking about a big farm cat. I'm talking about a Black Panther kind of cat, something big and melanistic. That we're not supposed to have that here in Missouri. Spam caller, you're messing up my world. Stop it. Anyway, but we're not supposed to have big melanistic cats here in Missouri. I know what I saw. I absolutely know what I saw. I saw it. I saw it as plain as day. It was in a field. It was moving like it was stalking prey. I saw it jump at what appeared to be a wild turkey, and I ain't talking about a bottle. And then I had moved past it, and I couldn't see it anymore. But I saw something, and science will tell me there's no black cats like that in Missouri.
Oh, yeah. But now they're finding black bear up around Mound City, Missouri.
Really? Because I
They're
thought
finding cougars.
I didn't think there were black bears in the state anymore.
Oh, yes. Now they've started counting them. This is in a place where they first started. They were here everywhere, before we came here.
Yeah.
This place was full of stuff. My brother said every day this guy would come to work. My brother works for Sarah Lee up in St. Joseph, Missouri. And he said, hey, this guy would come in every day and goes, guess what I saw? He goes, what? He goes, I saw 3 possum. And all this. My brother said, I'd sit there and just listen to the dude. And he'd go, yeah. And he goes, and then the next day he'd come in, I saw 4 coyotes on the way here. Oh, yeah? That's pretty interesting. He goes, I saw some great big. He said, it crossed that road right in front of me, and it had to be a cougar. Like that. My brother said, then the next day he went, he goes, guess what I saw this morning? And the guys looking at him, and he's like all intense. They're all listening. He goes, 4 giraffes. I'm so tired of them being in my backyard. But, people are amazed. We also are running over in northern Missouri, armadillo. Tell me what's up with that.
Armadillo go where they want to go. That's what they told me in Texas. Armadillo go where they want to go. And
But in northern Missouri, we're not supposed to have them. They'll always tell you what's not supposed to be. Well,
yeah.
Guess what? We're not supposed to have viruses that are able to transmute.
No. That's true. I mean, it's just like, I always think about my mother grew up over in Kansas City, Kansas, and when she was a 2-year-old little girl, she was out playing in their backyard, and she tried to a black widow spider, and instead it got her first. And they took her to the hospital, and the hospital said, well, did you see what bit her? And my grandfather at the time had gotten the spider and taken it with him. They said, oh, well, this is a black widow spider. It's amazing that she got bit by this. There can't be more than a dozen of them in the state of Kansas. He said, yes, there's more than that in my backyard. There's probably 100 of them. And they just figured out that they had probably come in potato sacks. And that's, I mean, and of course this was back in 55 and she was 2. So, but I mean, it's the same thing. It's just on different levels now.
Right.
I mean, and everybody's going to tell you what can't happen, what can't happen, what can't happen. But it's repetitive that we're always finding those things that actually do happen sooner or later. It's not more that it can't, it's more of when is it going?
Well,
and do you think so, Lord, do you think though too, that it has been happening all along and we've not been aware?
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about that a lot, Sheila, on here, that, a lot of the things that get started as these processes, these things that we'll talk about, I think a lot of times it's more that the world is getting, and I just mentioned this in one of my training classes that I did before last, the world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, because even 20 years ago, when my daughter was born, the capabilities of, or my son now, I'm sorry, 20 years ago, when my child who now identifies as male, that's much better, when I brought them home from the hospital, we didn't have the kinds of communication and sharing capabilities and the ability to interact from one side of the world to the other that we do now. And that was just 20 years ago. So imagine things were so much different even 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and how much different they'll be 50 or 100 years if the world and things that we know now, how much more we'll understand and how much more we'll interact with other things and other species than we do now. So,
that's very true. Like Roswell, New Mexico, you think about the epicenter that they've been studying. The government no longer denies UFO. The government no longer denies UFO.
Yeah.
What's that say?
It says they don't know enough. That they know they can't keep it away from the people anymore.
Why? Because it's becoming more common.
Exactly.
Because I believe they found another species.
Well, I think they've known about other species for a while, but...
Oh, I think so, too. I think they've kept a lot of stuff hidden that you can no longer hide. Because what's meant to be is meant to be.
Right. Well, it's like... one of my former in-laws, I guess it would be his brother, so my uncle-in-law at the time, I don't know. But he lives in a house in rural Overland Park. Not like the city-fied area, but the place that parts. Anyway, he went to the hospital because something stung him. Well, they were looking at it and it was like, this looks like a scorpion sting. We don't have scorpions in Missouri. He's like, that's funny. I have them all over my house. And that's, so, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure who does the, hey, you can find this here stuff, but he needs to go back and redo all his research because a lot of it is turning out to be wrong.
Well, there's a lot of docs, too, that, and I will tell you this because I've helped teach bioethics as an assistant professor at KU. A lot of docs come over here from another country. They are the most accepted of any theory. The people who are not are the doctors here in America. I mean, on the world wall, we are the youngest country.
Right.
Okay? Thus, our behaviors are that of the youngest people.
Well, it's like...
want to open up to believe. I mean, look at the Chinese dynasties. We're almost all certainly related to Genghis Khan.
Yeah, he was kind of a boy. Yeah.
He was a big boy.
But
and he got around.
I
think he started something.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was a nice girl.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
He might have been with May. We don't know.
I don't know. You'll come over for coffee, boys. I bring you number 4 special.
So,
but I think we're very silly. And another experience I've got to share with you, and then I've got to go here before too long. I had the pleasure of going to an old house that had no one living in it for a long time, with a friend of mine that is able to use one of those recorders and voices come across.
Mm-hmm.
I got to hear my husband's laugh.
Oh, that is awesome.
Everyone's here with me. And to hear Bo, to hear Susan, to hear Terry. And I know she and I were both crying. And he says, I told you, Toots. And then it was kind of messed up. If I could ever get to you, I'd tell you, I'm just beyond the veil. So he's right here.
Wow.
And the day they cremated him, Dean, I had no idea the day that they were cremating him. Shelley and I were in Las Vegas because, you know, he died in Kingman, Arizona, which is just right up. That's where they kept us, was in Las Vegas. And we didn't know what time they were going to be cremating him. But anyway, I started getting so hot. I mean, to the point of I was going to pass out. Shelley was just shirtless and stressed, me too. I said, I probably just need to go into this Applebee's here and just get some iced tea, just some water, something. She goes, Sheila, you turned so red. She goes, I've seen you turn pale, dusty, but I've never seen you turn so red. And I felt like I was just on fire. And I just sit down, and I wasn't putting two and two together at all at that time. I was kind of just in another world, kind of. Shelley goes, I think you were ready to pass out. Because she says, this one lady ran and got a wet cloth and put it on the back. These are total strangers in Las Vegas, you know. And I'm sitting there, so I get well enough, you know, and I go, okay, well, let's go back to the hotel. And as we walked out, Shelley goes, and we're looking at each other. I go, do you smell that? It was Walter's aftershave. He was the only one who wore Bay Run.
Mm-hmm.
We both smelled it so heavily. She goes, I'm looking around here. So she's looking at these shops. She goes, is there a perfumery, a men's store, you know, a barber shop or something like that? Nothing like that. We just stood there and cried. So he told me in his own way, he was fine. He crossed over. He was going to be there for me no matter what. I know my children, and he are safe. And they're all in a unit by themselves. Even though I have a grandson that reminds me so much of Bo. The laugh is even there. And his name is Augustus Beaumont. Clavin. Okay? We call him Gus. But I sure see Bud.
Well,
and he'll say stuff, and he thinks it's the first time I went, "Achoo," like that. He goes, "Oh, that's a cool new game." He was barely 2, and he goes, "Achoo," like that. And he would do it like it was an Oriental thing, and it was hilarious. But I just wanted to share that with you. I love this kind of talk. There is so much more out there. There's like all of the, not only the Bigfoot things, the theories, and I watch a lot of these. You know, we both know that some reality shows are scripted.
right.
We know that.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
You know, we all know that, where these guys act like they're scared, they stage it all up, blah, 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 blah. But I do believe Sasquatch could be a being we came from. They could be an ancestor.
Yeah.
They
Absolutely.
could be from another planet.
They could just...
Sent here to protect what's left of the woodlands.
I personally believe that they are one of the creatures that lives in the wider world that the Native Americans used to talk about, and that they can cross over whenever they feel like it. And there's a phenomenon called the missing 411. These are people that have just gone missing. And most of them, they shouldn't be. In fact, my favorite story is of a 2-year-old. Went missing. Was gone for over 2 days. They couldn't find this kid, right? And they eventually just find him wandering on a hill that they've searched a dozen times before. And he's like, I'm ready to go home now. And they're like, okay. So they take him home. Well, he's playing with his grandmother a few weeks later. And he looks at her and he's like, I like you much better than my other Grandma Lois. And Grandma Lois is like, what are you talking about? And he tells him this story of how he was found in the woods by a woman that looked like Grandma Lois, almost exactly like Grandma Lois. And she took him to this cave where he said there was all these robots that weren't working. And she tried to get him to poop on this piece of paper, and he wouldn't do it because 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, they have that moment of there's right and there's wrong, and I'm not going to do what's wrong, and this is clearly wrong. And so anyway, he won't do it, and finally she's like, oh, just go outside, somebody will find you. And so she's like, what are you guys watching? Well, they couldn't figure out why this kid thought this, but that same grandmother goes camping out in the same area about a year later, gets up in the middle of the night and sees all these red eyes looking at her. And nothing in nature has red eye shine. So we don't know what happened, but that kid went somewhere. I mean, full-grown adults don't miss a 2-year-old wandering in the wild.
No.
It's just so. And then,
you know, when you talk about that, you bring back the theory of walking souls. Have you heard of that?
No, I have not. So I'm fascinated from ground one here.
I will start with this. Have you ever felt so down and out, but could not commit suicide, but wanted to leave your body?
Not lately, but when I was younger, definitely.
You need to watch. There's a couple specials out there, and when people change so drastically overnight, and it's been known to happen, another soul, when you allow them, can walk in and take your place and finish the life you're supposed to lead. But you couldn't for some emotional reason. Something had scarred you, upset you.
You just kind of given up your body.
You could no longer take, and now we find people who really take their lives. Well, I think walk-in souls were a little more abound in the decade before this. Right now we have way too many young people commit suicide. The they and them are poor young people that they start out boy and girl. We need to respect that. And I think they're the new people that are coming.
Right.
We need to respect that and let it be. We don't have to understand it. We need to respect.
And I'm with you on that. And you mentioned
I don't disrespect the blue jay because it's blue.
Exactly.
Okay. I just think that we need to. People who are unisex, we need to let it be. But walk-in souls used to be very, very common, and there still is quite a bit about them. Edgar Cayce spoke of these.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Casey. I haven't wanted to tackle that as an episode because there's so much information. It would almost certainly be at least two. Okay. And I hate doing double episodes without a great reason. And it's just, that's a lot of work for me to strap on and learn. And I'm just not ready for it yet. Now,
thank you for mentioning strap on, one of my favorite words.
There we go. One thing I have to talk to you about, because I know you said you have to get out of here, is the dream that led me to have you on the show. And
you're going to make her cry. I already know you're going to make her cry because I saw the face. And it's a mom thing. I see it. I know what's coming. So,
and I'm going to keep. When I first met Bo, I did not know he was your son. Yeah. He was standing in the back of the room wearing this white T-shirt, just looking very relaxed. And I was sitting waiting to go on. And he gave me my space. And then once I went on, he started talking to me about what he liked and what he didn't. And I mean, I still had no idea who he was. And then he's like, and so at one point I'm like, so are you going up? And he's like, no, my mom is. Your mom? Who's that? And he points and it's Shelah. And I'm like, okay. And this, Bo touched me. Like I never knew at first that there was anything wrong with Bo's heart. But he was able to just reach through you almost. Like whatever defenses you had up, Bo would just like, yeah, no, you're going to like me. And just like, he was amazing. And I took it hard when you lost. Not as hard as you did, I'm sure. But
I know you did.
So a little while back, I had this dream where he's here, right? Normally we're all gathered around my computer wearing headphones. I've got a mixer and everything else. And so he was here like he was going to do the show, and he kept making Krysta laugh and Laura laugh. And I was like, we've got to stop laughing because we got to record this eventually. And he's like, I can't help it. I'm just being me. And, but he was making us all laugh. And at one point, he says, I'm not telling you there's no such thing as ghosts. I'm just telling you I'm not one. And then at another point, he says, why haven't you had Mom on the show? And when I woke up, dreams are weird for me. I don't often remember them. But what I remember of that one is Bo, And those two things that he said, and I feel like, okay, that's him trying to tell me, these are important, you should pay attention to this. And so I did, and I haven't figured out where the ghost comment goes, or if that's something I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that, but I knew I had to get you on the show.
Yeah, and I think I showed you the picture of when we moved in the house in St. Joe. Bo had passed, of course, and Walter and I had moved to St. Joseph, and I took a picture of this beautiful stairway, and Bo was on the stairway. People were fascinated. They go, "Is that Bo?" And you could barely see it, but it was him smiling. Like, wherever you go, wherever you are, I'll be there. And I know that. I feel him. I see him a lot around my grandson, Augie, or Gus, as I call him. But my daughter now has experienced the loss of a child. Jackie lost her little boy, Norman.
Oh, no.
Just before he was 1. And
so sorry
Augie
for your loss.
looks so much like him. And all I can tell you is, if you read the piece that I wrote, Laura, on Facebook, and then now I've started a blog called I'm Doing It My Way, I'm Going to Do It My Way. It's about grief, and it's celebrating, I can't say celebrating grief, but it's doing it my way and making it a purpose.
Absolutely. And I think that everything happens for a reason, and we can't necessarily...
There's a lesson behind everything. That I gathered from my grandfather. The worst things that you think that are possible, like losing a child, losing your spouse, losing an animal, there's a lesson. And it's a lesson for you to remember in your soul. And it's a mark my soul type of thing. And the lesson with Bo, with his loss, was to profoundly believe that all things are possible, and that because he wasn't supposed to make it to 2, he wasn't supposed to make it to 3, wasn't supposed to make it to 10, here he made it to 22 years old, and give people a chance. Like when he was telling us that he had this hot date here he had at Children's Mercy, he was in there for chicken pox or something, where every other little kid would normally be at home or something. He was in the hospital. He goes, I got this hot date coming. So he's telling Chris and I about it. We're all visiting him there. And he goes, yeah, he goes, she is the coolest kid. And he goes, she's so cute, Mom. You got to see her. In comes a little girl in a wheelchair with nothing from the waist down.
Wow.
And your heart goes, wow. He goes, isn't she so pretty? She's so cute. She's my date. Absolutely.
Yes.
Love. Just love. That's what we get from Bo. And Dean, I think he reached through so many people like he did you. And he saw that you were there. And he saw that you were scared. And he had a good way of putting people at ease.
I just connected with Bo.
Well, he connected with you too, brother.
Yeah, it was like he was a long-lost brother. It was like he had been in my life my entire life. I just never met him before. And and that's the best way I can put it. And it was just...
And all dreams are past, present, future.
Yeah, see.
Being the psychiatric MP that I am, I shall share that with you as I leave you all. I love you guys.
We love you. And thank you
so much for coming and spending some time with us, Sheila. Please come back anytime.
Okay.
We do a show every week. You are always welcome to come and discuss our topics with us. Our poor little Krysta, she didn't really get any chance to talk because you guys need to get together and converse more, but I know you're super busy. I know that he loves you so much, and that makes me love you, even though we haven't spent a lot of time together.
I know, but I love you, Laura. Of course, and I love you. I love Krysta, and I love all of Dean's offspring.
I know. Our James, yours, mine, and ours family. All of our
Yes. And you're all so loving, and it's nothing but love. And son, I love you. I will talk to you all later. God bless each and every visitor that comes to your show. Whatever God you want. Okay?
All right.
I
And
don't care.
I appreciate
we
that.
love one another and quit killing each other, okay?
That's part of why we do this, is that we are a family podcast.
Yes.
And our invitation is if you listen, if you're a guest, you're part of the family. Please come join us. And so that's really our goal. And
We need that.
yeah, and thank you for being a guest and being so amazing and letting us just share some time with you. And here's hoping you never see the naked trucker. You know that story, right? I've told you that story. Yeah, I to this day.
The tickle. There you go. That's much better. We like laughing people much better than crying.
Well, it's laughing and tears, and that's the best way to have a joy.
There's nothing wrong with a little laughter.
No. Hi, Krysta, for me, okay?
Say bye, Krysta.
Bye.
Bye, Daniel.
Bye.
I'll talk to you all later.
Thank you, Sheila.
You bet. Love you all.
Love you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that's the end of our show. Thank you all for listening and for sharing this time with us. We love you so much. This has been a labor of love for myself. And Krysta, I'm sorry you didn't get to talk as much as you normally do. But
It's okay. It's a new person. I didn't really feel like I had much to say anyway, so.
and thank you, honey. I love you. I guess it's just time to end the show.
I'm gonna hop in. So, thank you for tuning in. As always, please join us on social media. We do have a Facebook group, the Family Plot Facebook group. Come and join us there. You can also follow us on Twitter at plot_family, or I am BamPlotMom Laura on Twitter, and we have F_Crystalline
F. Crystalline.
on Twitter, and then you guys also have
Twitter. We also have Instagram. I have Pinterest. Krysta has TikTok. Yeah.
so many ways that you can find us. If not, you can always just send us, either of us or any of us, a direct message on any of those platforms, and we'll be happy to have you get to listen to our podcast, to join us on social media. Thank you again. And do we know what our next show is, Dad?
Off the top of my head, I do not.
What kind of shaking things up a little bit? We've got a little bit of a new outlook on life. I've got my new job that I started, so we're lots of exciting things, and hopefully we can continue with all of those exciting things. And thank you for spending some time with our family today. So,
Thank you so much. Yep. And remember, when you listen, you're part of the family. We love you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
y'all good?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I really didn't have much to say there. I did make a schedule of like